there's a statistic out there, and it's a US statistic, but I think it's worldwide as far as I'm aware. That's the statistic is that 60% of small businesses that suffer a major cyber incident go out of business in the first 6 months after it, which is
Wow.
huge, huge.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on Behind the Scenes, where we get real and authentic about what goes into building successful businesses. We're talking about all the things that maybe you are shying away from, brushing under the rug, or just are too overwhelmed with to talk about. But we're going to shed some light, make it easier for everybody. And I'm so excited to have my guest with me today, Katrina Ford, who is all about cybersecurity. She is passionate about cybersecurity and its impact on small to medium-sized businesses. As a consultant, Katrina educates organizations on cybersecurity. She is on a mission to educate businesses and the community at large to have a better understanding of the risks of cyber attacks. With years of experience working with businesses of all sizes and across many industries, she has a strong understanding of operations and culture, which we all know. If you're not new to the channel, I love operations. We talk about that. But she applies this knowledge when devising and implementing tech solutions which need to complement and assist the business to maximize profitability and operational effectiveness. You're speaking my language on so many levels, but this is a topic that I actually don't know a lot about. So I'm excited for you to bring so many tips and tricks and knowledge to us today. But I really want to know, how did you get started in cybersecurity? Because before we were rolling, you let me know that it's actually not very common for women to be in this
Yeah,
field. So
yeah.
would you like to tell everyone how you kind of got started in your business?
Thanks, Emma, and thanks for having me on. I always get very excited when somebody asks me to be a guest because I think it is a topic that a lot of people are shying away from.
Yeah.
But it's a really important topic, and as we move into the future, our businesses are built on technology, so
Yeah.
it's going to become a more important part of our business. But how did I get into cybersecurity? Everybody asks this when they come across me because I think I'm not your typical cybersecurity expert. First of all, I'm a female, but also I'm red haired. I
Which
wouldn't
I
class
love.
myself.
I love your red hair.
I wouldn't class myself as a typical cyber or IT geek,
Yeah.
but I got into cyber. Well, first of all, I suppose I got into IT 20 years ago. I went to uni I wanted to go to uni to be an accountant, and after studying, I was like, no, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I don't enjoy numbers. And I just by chance fell into IT.
Okay.
And it was really by chance because it was the only course that I could easily transfer into, that I'd got the grades for. And back 20 years ago, I grew up in rural Ireland. We didn't have computers. So
Right.
we'd one computer in our school that you were allowed 5 minutes a week on, and we didn't have a computer in our family home. So when I went to study computers, I can remember my mum saying to me, "What are you going to study IT for? Why would you just do something like this?"
You
And
were ahead of the curve though. Like,
well, the city kids were all ahead of the curve. Anybody that grew up in the cities had IT at school, but in the
okay.
country it hadn't got out to the country yet.
Okay.
So but I took to it like a duck to water, and I think what I really loved about IT was I was able to help those that didn't understand it, you
Mm,
know. And so it was
yeah.
all about serving and giving back. And I loved teaching business owners how they could leverage IT systems and solutions to grow their business, to automate their business, and to
Yeah.
make their business more efficient.
Right.
Um, so I suppose that's talking your language as well, because it's down to the operations and systems.
Yes.
Uh,
I love tech, but I'm not good at like all kinds of tech. I love like softwares and automations and
yeah.
like that. But like my fiance is my like hardware tech person. Like he set up my computer, he set up my like monitor system here. So that's where like my knowledge ends pretty much, is the physical hardware of the computer.
And I think most people will admit that they are the same, to be honest. It can
Yeah.
sometimes be a bit of a scary side to businesses, the tech side. But how I got into cyber was I was supporting a lot of small to medium sized businesses, which I'd done through my whole career.
Okay.
And about 5 years ago, I started to see a lot of them getting hit by cybercrime. So maybe being hit with what you call ransomware, where their files were encrypted and hackers were holding them to ransom.
Okay, because I was
Um,
gonna ask you what defines like cyber attacks, like kind of like what
yeah,
do those look like? And that's
those
super
types of
useful.
those were the big ones back then. It still is. Ransomware is still a big one, but probably prior to that, we would say viruses getting onto computers and slowing computers down and just causing a bit of havoc, but not really as malicious as what ransomware was. So ransomware was basically if you didn't have a backup of your computer system or a current backup, then you would
Yeah.
have to either pay the ransom or you would then lose your data. And I remember one accountancy firm that I helped. They thought their data had been backed up, but it hadn't been backed up for 2 weeks. The backups had stopped running.
Oh my
So
gosh.
they had to either make a decision where they're going to pay, I think it was $15,000 at that stage of the ransom, or were they going to lose 2 weeks worth of data? And they had 40 accountants that worked for them at the time, and they had to take the gamble. They decided to pay the ransom, which was a massive gamble because you still didn't know if you were going to get your money, the key
Yeah.
to get your data back or not. So that was what made me move across to cyber, because I realized this was no longer an IT problem. It wasn't an operational problem. This was more something new that I hadn't seen before. And then I took the leap of faith and went to back to university when I was 38 and done my master's in cybersecurity. And I finished that early this year. So yeah, I'm very if you had said to me 5 years ago you'd be going back to university, I'd have been like, hell no.
Oh
but
yeah.
I but I went back and I absolutely loved it. I think it was because I loved learning about something that I was super passionate about. It didn't
Right.
really feel like I was studying. It was more it was very enjoyable for me, and now that I can use that knowledge to help business owners.
What made you go from corporate to owning your own consulting business? Kind of like
Yeah,
what was that push?
that's another question that I get quite a lot. I suppose I've always been in the small business field,
Okay.
helping small businesses. And then when I moved across to cyber, I realized that small businesses wasn't really ready for full-blown cyber security advice or consultancy. And I was very fortunate to win a corporate contract and
Okay.
got my experience in the cyber industry pretty early on. But over the last, I suppose, 12 to 18 months in particular, I've had so many small business owners reach out to me after they've been hacked, businesses that maybe I've supported in the IT industry before, or, just people that have seen me on Instagram or LinkedIn.
Right.
And so that's really been the motivation now to, you know, I have two arms of my business. One is helping the solopreneur, the small business, and I still do work with the corporates. So for corporates, I do what you call security awareness programs. So I go in
Gotcha.
and train their staff on how to identify things like phishing and scams and social engineering. And so there are normally 12-month programs that we deliver for larger organizations, but the small solo businesses, it really is helping them understand, okay, what technology have you in place? Is it the most secure technology? Maybe it's normally settings, they haven't set up maybe multi-factor authentication, or they just don't have the proper backup in place, or the basics that you
Hmm.
need to have in place as a small business owner. So I'm
Yeah.
really, that is definitely my passion. That's what I'm super passionate about.
Right.
But also some of the corporates that I work with, some of them are maybe critical infrastructure, and if they suffered a cyber incident, it would impact the community as well. So for me, it's all about helping and giving back.
Yeah, that's like a big thing now is like, well, there in the US here, a couple, I don't know, what time is all like run together for me. I just
I
had
know.
so like everything feels like it was just a little bit ago, but this I could be wrong about the date, but it was like a big news article where someone hacked into a government system and like basically instead of holding the data for ransom was like they weren't because it was a remote operated thing. I forget. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
heard about this. But
Yeah.
it's like a big deal. And I was like, that I guess was like the first big public thing that I've heard about in recent years that was like, okay, this is like hackers and cybersecurity. Like it's a big deal and you don't know and definitely don't think about it as a small business owner, like that you would be targeted. But
Yeah.
you're saying like small business owners are specifically targeted because they're not prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely small businesses are now, I would say, probably high on the target list.
Yeah.
You have to realize when I studied cyber security, I realized that there's different size of cyber criminals for
Okay.
different size of cyber crimes. So
Yeah.
you'll have the ones that will go after the large corporates, critical
Yeah.
infrastructure. They're probably more organized criminal groups and gangs, so they're very, very organized. Sometimes they can be what you call state sponsored, so they're government funded. So some countries fund cybercrime, believe it or not. And I know
Didn't
you're
know
looking.
that.
Yeah. So what we call nation state attacks are quite big. So one country attacks another country's critical infrastructure. Um, just this morning, I've literally just read an article. It's from the US. I hope I pronounce this right. Forgive me if I don't. I'm Irish and I live in Australia.
Yeah.
But it's the US Embassy in Montreal, I think it is Montreal, has warned Americans that there's a ransomware attack attacking their public services and their government services. And they've said that they've traced it back and it seems to be a coordinated attack from Russia. So
Oh
that's
my
what we
God.
see quite a lot, and that's probably the side of cybercrime that people don't see. But in terms of small businesses, hackers know now that small businesses aren't investing in their technology. They're not investing in their cybercrime. Small businesses unfortunately have the mindset, it won't happen to me, it'll happen to somebody else. So therefore they're an easy target.
That's what everyone thinks until it happens to them.
I know. And it's one of the first things that when a small business owner reached out to me, especially even small things like losing their Instagram accounts, that's huge right now. That's just crazy. That's
I
just
had that happen to me before I was a business owner. It
no
was
way.
devastating. Well, because like I was in college at the time, so like
Yeah.
my Instagram was like, oh my God, I put so many years into this, like,
Yeah.
and it was hacked and turned into a spam account. And
Yeah.
since Instagram has no good like support or
Yeah.
security or anything, there was nothing I could do, and I just had to start a new account.
And this year alone, I have helped, I would say hundreds of business owners that have lost their Instagram accounts. And it's like I've a couple of weeks ago, I had she was a TV personality who's
Yeah.
she's a TV chef. She's lost her account, 100,000 followers, and it's gone. Can't get it back. She's built it up over years. And the
Yeah.
hackers are now pretending to be her and trying to sell cryptocurrency to her following.
Yes. Oh my gosh, my one friend had this happen. She's not even a business owner. She's just like
Yeah.
it was just her own personal account, and then they messaged me and were like, "Oh, can I have $200 or blah blah blah?" Like made it sound like her, but I know her enough that I'm like, "You wouldn't Instagram me if you need $200. You would just call me."
Yeah.
Like it was like so weird.
Yeah,
That's
and that's sort of what I talk about a lot on my Instagram page is there is a difference between scammers and hackers. And there's a
mhm,
lot of scammers out there. They're using the same techniques as the hackers, but the hackers are more geared at infiltrating organizations, larger businesses. The
yeah,
scammers to me are those ones that are maybe trying to steal your Instagram account or maybe trying to get you to purchase something that's fake and things like that. They're
yeah,
after the quick buck. But it depends, like there is a statistic out there, and it's a US statistic, but I think it's worldwide as far as I'm aware. That's the statistic is that 60% of small businesses that suffer a major cyber incident go out of business in the first 6 months after it, which is
wow,
huge. but I understand why, because as a small business, and you know, I'm growing my own small business as well, we all know how challenging it is in those first few years to, you know, just get systems and processes and make money and attract customers, and it sometimes can feel really hard. And
Yeah.
then to be maybe knocked in the teeth with a major cyber incident, maybe you've lost your client's data, maybe you've paid a huge invoice. Like I've had a few clients this week, one has paid two $50,000 invoices that are fake. So they're fake invoices that they thought were coming from a supplier, but the hackers had infiltrated the supplier's mailbox, changed the bank details on the invoice, and then the person had paid these $250,000. So for a small business, if you were to lose $100,000, that could put you out of business. Do you know, you might not be able to come back.
That's what I
So
was gonna ask you, is like, is that kind of big in the, like, stealing money, I guess, or like,
yeah,
I would have thought like maybe hacking into the bank accounts, but you're saying like they just
no,
do the invoices.
that's business. We call that business email compromise. It's huge across the world right now. So what they're doing is they will send like a phishing email, so a fake email, and it might look like it's come from Gmail or Microsoft Office 365, and it says you need to reset your password on your email account. And it redirects you to maybe what looks like a Gmail login page, or maybe Office 365 and Microsoft login page. And you put in your username and password to reset your password, but you're actually giving it to the hackers. Then the hackers move into your mailbox and they set up rules and hidden folders. And if you're sending and doing work with invoices, then they'll infiltrate those invoices, change the bank account details, and send them on from your account. And then the person that receiving them doesn't know that it's fake because it's come from your email address, which is legit. It comes probably in the format that you send invoicing, and therefore sometimes it can be really hard to spot. So that's something that I've, like this year alone, I'd say I've had probably between 10 and 20 people, businesses that have fallen for that.
That makes me so nervous, just because like that is like, it's not something you think about because you're like, I'm just trying to get everything else set up and, you know, attracting the right people. And you don't think about that security aspect. And something I want to ask you is, because of the work I've done and a lot of my followers are VAs or OBMs, service providers like that. And a lot of what we do is we have to share, like our clients have to share passwords with us. And
Yeah.
a lot of people, I've seen it done in not great secure ways. Like that's something that's always, like, I get really paranoid about, because I don't ever want to be the cause of that with my clients. And some clients will just send me like, or just want to send it to me via like Facebook Messenger or email.
Yeah.
Like, please don't do that. Or if you're gonna send it to me via email, do like a secure email that gets deleted, or like, can you provide us with some tips on that? Like, what's a secure way to be sharing passwords? Because like I'm in my clients' Google sometimes, and like,
Yeah. Look, the best way is, first of all, if you're doing, you know, extended pieces of work for a client, get them to set you up an account, a secure account on their platform. So say if they're using Google Workspace or they're using another maybe CRM or something like that, get them to set you up your own personal account, because that's one or two things. You can secure it and you can reset your password, but also they can track what you're doing, and vice versa. You can track what somebody else is doing.
that's
So
what I've
that's
been.
always, yeah, that's always the first best way. Now, if you've got accounts, say like you're a social media manager and you need Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all these social, TikTok now is one as well. If you need all access, the best way is to set up a password manager and share that password via your password manager with that other person. So I'll give you an example. I use LastPass. Now I know it's just had a bit of a data breach, and I've just spoke about that on my Instagram account recently as well. It's still a secure platform, but a password manager is a must. So I have all my passwords in my password manager. I have an amazing virtual assistant. She's so good, but she doesn't know my passwords. So I have shared them with her. So she can access my accounts, but she doesn't know my passwords. So at any point where I need to remove her access, or, you know, she decides to move on or whatever, I can just go in and remove that access from the password manager, and she doesn't know what my password ever was.
That's what I use, and that's what I try. Like, I use that one a lot, especially for my team and for whenever I was onboarding clients there. I just wanted to make sure like that's just a good one. And two, there are clients that I have who will be like, I don't want to use LastPass because it's buggy or it like won't let me log in. And I'm like, that's a huge risk. Like,
Yeah.
I know I'm never gonna like would never do anything like that for a client, but it still makes me uncomfortable, like
Well, the other problem with not using a password manager and still creating your own passwords, and I share this in a workshop that I deliver, is that okay, there's been so many data breaches now. So if you have had a LinkedIn account or you've had a Microsoft account or Facebook, oh my God, Facebook have data breaches all the time. So these hackers then, steal these passwords for these accounts and they're on the dark web. Hacker decides they want to target you, they'll go and see what passwords you have been using that's on the dark web. Then they know what the method is that you use, because we all are creatures of habit. We all, come up with a technique for creating our passwords, and we'll do the same thing for all of them. We might change something, but then they start to understand, okay, well, Katrina sets her password like this, and she just changes this and this. So then they start to have an understanding of how you set up your password. So that's why you should never, ever create your own passwords. You should let a password manager do it for you.
Yeah, that's really good to know and like be aware of, especially for anyone watching, because like I said, I have a lot of VAs, OBMs, service providers that follow me and they don't think about that sometimes. And I'm like, you need to be aware because also if you leave, you need to rescind those or make sure you're not like I've had clients where I'm like, you have like I'll go through and delete them because they don't think to take away that access from me. And I'm like, I don't want them like I don't want to be liable.
Yeah.
So like as a service provider, you have to be like considering that because it is part of our work. And it sometimes is in the moment easier to be like, just email it, message it, blah, blah, blah. But you need to be aware of that security aspect as well. Even if LastPass, sometimes it's hard to open passwords from time to time. It's a little buggy, but it's way easier, way better than just like you said, sharing it and it getting out on the dark web and then you're hacked.
Yeah.
I like the first method if you can, like add an account. Even if it is a little bit more money, like it's better.
Yeah. And the other thing that from a small business owner perspective, you need to think about, and a lot of small business owners don't think about this, is who are your clients and could you be targeted to get to your client? So if you are working with a larger brand or somebody of significance, would you be targeted
to flaunt that on their social like media and their website? Like,
yeah. So that's called supply chain attack, and we're seeing a lot of that right now. And we're seeing a lot of hackers looking, especially on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, to see who you're working with. And obviously, if you're a virtual assistant, an OBM, you'll have access to most of their systems and platforms. So, are you being targeted for the clients that you work with?
Yeah. That's a good point. I never would have thought of that.
Yeah.
Especially
most people don't think of that one. Yeah.
And contractors for like if you're a contractor, because I've done contracting work for bigger businesses or small agencies within my area, that's like a weak point potentially.
Yeah.
For them to get
them. Yeah, I've done work with, say, marketing agencies that have worked with large brands and they're large, well-known brands. So that marketing agency could be targeted to get to that brand because they know that the brand reputation is really important. So therefore that brand wouldn't want to have it on the media that they've been hacked. So, they're very strategic. The hackers are, they're very strategic in how they move and who they target and what they do. There also is ones out there that will just what we call blanket spray. So they'll just send out an attack, a phishing email, and just see who will take the bait. But then there's ones that are more targeted. They do their research, they scour social media, they do web scraping to see what information they can gather and who then they should target.
Wow. I'm like just still like trying to like that's just it blows my mind how easily people and like I used to be in supply chain, so that makes total sense. Like because you got to be aware on both
Yeah,
ends, and it's just an easy because you already have that trust to just go in through the
yeah,
vendor or the customer in a sense. Um, how secure would you say like are because you talked about that the ransom earlier and like things being on their server and data and a lot of small business owners they're cloud based. Like I keep a
yeah.
lot of stuff in the cloud or like a cloud based software. So I'm like I can access it anywhere. But how secure
Yes.
are those?
That's a really good question because that's a myth. I call that a myth. I often hear people say, "I'm in the cloud, so I'm secure,"
Mm,
and that is somewhat right, but again, it's not fully right. So, for instance, you may be using a cloud database, but have you set up secure passwords? Have your staff got secure passwords on it? Have you got multi-factor authentication? Are you backing up that cloud? A lot of small business owners have this assumption that because they're in the cloud provider is backing up their data. Now, some of them will offer a small, very limited backup, but
yeah.
when you go to recover, it mightn't recover exactly how you want it to recover or everything that you want it to recover. So
That's,
ransomware is another one. Even if you're in the cloud, there could be, depending on how it's set up, it could infiltrate your cloud setup as well. So the other thing that I talk about is that hackers hack people. So they target us as humans. So they will try and manipulate us into giving access to their cloud platforms and things like that. So the cloud is definitely much more safe than just hosting it on your own computer and then trying to do your own backups and things like that. But you
right.
also need to make sure that you have those security measures in place when you're using the cloud as well.
Yeah, because like that's a big thing for again, if you're a remote worker, you have a remote team,
Yeah.
it's you want it to be able to be accessible, but then which is good because then I guess if they're holding things for ransom, it's probably like more difficult, I would imagine,
Yeah.
to hold that.
I Yeah, and I'd also say like consider what if that cloud provider wasn't there tomorrow? We just put so much trust in some of these online
Mm,
companies and platforms, but we just don't know. One day, there was I think it was Microsoft earlier this year, their Teams platform was down, they had an issue with it. Google have had times of outages as well. What
yeah,
if they had a sustained outage, or what if they went out of business, or hackers hacked their systems and they were down for days on end? Would you be able to contact your customers? Would you have a list of your customers? These are the types of things that I say from a business owner's perspective. It's your business. It's not the vendor that you're working with or the cloud platform that you're working with. It's your responsibility to make sure that you have access to that data, that you know who your customers are, and that you know that you can still continue to operate if that business or that cloud vendor wasn't there anymore.
there's like two that come to mind that if they shut down, I would not like I don't know how it would operate because I use
Yeah.
everything within ClickUp and a large portion of my business is also run through Dubsado.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
those are two of the biggest ones, and I am
Yeah.
actually sharing with my email list. This might depending on when my email is scheduled and this episode comes out, is I just found a software that does, like, a third-party backup for your ClickUp that it's supposed to help because I've seen that happen where, like and I help set up people on ClickUp, and it's scary to think, you might not be able to get things back, if you don't pay for it, and if you're on, like,
Yeah.
like, a smaller plan, you might not be able to, um, and sometimes it does like, you just wanna make sure you have that backup because they don't,
Yeah.
like you said,
Yeah.
provide that sometimes. So, I've seen that being a big issue, so I finally found a vendor that can do that, but it's, again, a vendor, like you said. So, being
Yeah. And like
super
it's
aware.
you also have to think about from I'm thinking now with my IT hat on,
Mhm.
if you have a team members, and we all make mistakes, maybe they've deleted a folder or a file and you don't
Yeah.
realize for like 4 months that's gone, and you go to recover it, and the standard backup with your platform doesn't allow you to recover, so, and that happens quite a lot.
I deleted my homepage on accident and I didn't notice, and like no one said anything to me, and none of my team members noticed either, like I guess because we weren't doing anything on the website, and then it was gone. And I was like,
Yeah.
I had to redo that.
Yeah, to do your website. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's those types of things as well. Like, do you have a backup of your website? If you're self-managing your website, how often do you check that it's still there? I co-host a cybersecurity podcast here in Australia, and we talk more about the cybersecurity technical side and general news stories as well. But our first episode, we had a small business owner on from Perth, where I'm from, and he owned a cocktail making company. So he'd come out and host cocktail making parties, which sounded really fun. But he said at the start of the pandemic, his leads started to dry up, and he thought it was just because of the pandemic. That's what had happened. But it started to really impact his business. So they started to look at, okay, where was leads coming from? How were we generating leads before? Why are they not coming in? And when they went and had a look, their website was offline. A hacker had hacked it and redirected the website somewhere else. And what they then discovered was that 90% of their leads was coming via that website. And because it was no longer there, that's why their leads had dried up. It wasn't actually because of the pandemic.
Yep.
And he nearly went out of business because of it. He talks about it on the podcast. He was really, really emotional about it. And that's what he said. Business owners need to stop and look at what's the important parts of your business. In my workshops, I call it your crown jewels. So how do you identify what you need to make sure your business can still operate if doomsday was to happen? How do you keep going if you don't have access to your technology or your systems or your platforms? And that's what he said. He didn't realize that his website was definitely his crown jewel in his business, because without it, he nearly went out of business.
That's why I'm such a proponent of especially as a business owner, you should be looking at your key, like needle moving metrics, your health metrics once a month. Like,
yes,
beginning, end of the month, you should be reflecting and looking at like, where are those leads coming from? What was your profit and loss? Like, I think I have like a health metric of 7, like just for like beginners, not to overwhelm them. Like, you should at least be looking at this data once a month, and then as you grow, there'll be other metrics that come into play. But because that could have been preventable or caught sooner, is if you're looking at your website metrics, for sure.
And like, I understand it can be very overwhelming, at the start, the first few years of your business, because you're wearing so many different hats, and cybersecurity might be just something that that it's a concern. It might be a dread that you have, and you're just brushing it under the carpet. The other thing that I see a lot with small business owners, and I'm toying with how I try and help this side of business, is there's a lot of what we call limiting beliefs around technology. You often hear small business owners say, I don't like technology. I don't do IT. I'm not tech savvy. I hate technology. All these phrases come out of business owners' mouths.
Expensive. I get that one a lot.
Too expensive, exactly. And that's, especially with cybersecurity, that's one of the things that it's a very big misconception, because you already have most of the things in place. It's just you're not using it properly, or you don't know how to identify. You haven't upskilled how to identify the scams that's happening out there. So that's a lot of what I teach, is that most of the settings are already in the applications that you have in your business. You just don't know how to turn them on. And I also say cybersecurity, it's more of a life skill now that we all have to have, even in our personal lives.
That's a big thing right now. I don't know if it's big in Australia, but in the US, like text message spam.
Smishing.
I like have to remind my parents, because they're not really tech savvy. I'm like, do not press a link in any text message you get. Go back to your account. Like, stop pressing the links.
It's huge here. We've had all different types of ones. It's tax time here in Australia. Well, it was at the end of June. And that was one of the ones that was coming from the ATO, which is the tax office here, the Australian tax office.
Yeah.
So many scams around that. We've had ones coming from, anybody that's had to go for a COVID test, then click here to get your results, but that's not how you get your results, so there's coming up now at this time of the year, you've got Black Friday and Cyber Monday coming up.
Yep.
This is the most rampant time for cybercrime and scams online, with text messages, phishing emails, fake websites. Yep, we see from sort of the end of October right through to probably the middle to the end of December, online scams just go through the roof.
Yeah, everyone's like, I'm willing to spend money, and then they just like click links,
I want a
and
special offer.
yep, they will do it, and they'll click it, and they don't even like, because I worked for like my corporate job, we were in I worked for a government agency, like government contracted, and we had like the scariest briefings like every other month, I feel like, because we were working on like secure information, and
Yeah,
people would target us, like other countries, governments would target us and things like that. So we were like, they were above and beyond like the phishing trainings that I've received at other corporates, because
yeah,
they took it so seriously. Because if someone got into our system, it was national security like worthy.
yeah,
So it's like people don't always think about it in that sense, and they're like, oh, it'll never happen. And then it does. Like my mom lost her identity based, not lost it, but like got it stolen because of her job, because she worked for the
yeah.
government, and she was in that one that actually got hacked twice from China.
Wow. Wow, yeah. And that's a very common, it's a very common story, and
Mhm.
but the thing is the hackers are playing on, they might look at different times of the day to target you. So like a Friday afternoon is a big time because we're on the wind down for the weekend. We're not concentrating on our
Mhm.
job. So they know it's a time that we like. Lunchtime, around lunchtime is another massive time where they target employees and businesses, because again, you're maybe out having your lunch, eating, going through your emails at the same time. So
Yeah.
they're very, they know how we behave, and they know what triggers they are. So like things I talk about, some of the emotions that they will trigger. So like helpfulness, everybody wants to be helpful. So you get an email from your boss saying, I really need your help, can you please do this for me? You want to help.
Yeah.
You might, they play on things like or want to be abundant and have more money and generate more wealth. So therefore they might advertise things about this investment and opportunity that you have right now. Have you heard about this new cryptocurrency? Things
Mhm.
that if that's your mindset to invest, then you'll be intrigued.
Yeah.
So they know. Even curiosity is another one that they'll play on.
Yeah.
If you're working in a corporate or a business and you get an email saying staff bonuses, and it's got a
Mhm.
PDF saying staff bonuses, and it looks like it's come from your boss, and maybe they've sent it by mistake.
Yeah.
Well, we're very curious people, so we automatically want to open, and that's the hackers play on our human nature. They play on, how they can trick us.
And now that you're saying this, it makes me think back to when I started my business. Like I started it as a VA business, and I was like, I don't know how to get leads. Like I would just like apply to like job ops instead of like marketing myself. And I
Yeah,
see it so much. Like obviously I had that background, like I knew better and like I knew what to look for, but some people don't. Like a lot of the moms in the mom groups that I was in, people would come in and spam them with these
yeah,
job ops, and then take it to the DMs, and it's like they're asking you to pay for something, and they're asking you to do this, or like, and some people don't notice that their red flags are sketchy, and they get scammed out of money, or they like get hacked because of it, because they know people want like to start their business or just want a client, like, and want to
yeah,
get that experience. And when you're starting out, like I remember people doing like free work for like a testimonial and things like that. So
yeah,
that they would be like asking for bank account information or to send them like
yeah.
info that they shouldn't have been asking for.
Yeah, in Australia at the moment, one is around property, buying houses. So they are targeting real estate agents
Yeah.
and then hacking their mailboxes and then trying to convince buyers that they need to transfer their deposit into the secure account. So that's happening quite a lot here at the moment. Settlement agents as well. So still pretending to be the agent and convincing the new homeowner or the potential new homeowner that this is the process. If you've never bought a new home before, you don't know what the process is.
Don't.
Yeah. So there's things like that happening here. I believe it's happening all over the world, but I know in Australia at the moment that's a massive one.
Well, that's good to know too, because a lot of our friends are buying houses like right now. I'm lucky my fiance, when we bought our house, he'd done it like 4 or 5 times at that point because he is a real estate investor, but like I didn't have to deal with any of that, thank
You knew
God.
the process.
He knew the process. Like we're very close with our real estate agent because we do so much with him now. But I'm like curious for some tips on how like small business owners can identify this kind of stuff. What can we do to protect ourselves, or to look for just to get us started?
Yeah. Look, I think depending on the size of your business, if you're in the startup phase, just get the basics in place. Make
Mhm.
sure that your online accounts have multi-factor authentication set up. Make sure that you're using an authenticator app and you're not doing it via email or SMS because both of those
Mhm.
are hackable. Passwords, is number one. You need to make sure that you get them in order. It might seem like a really daunting task, but invest in a password manager. There is free ones out there, but in the industry we always say if the product is free, you're normally the product. So pay a little bit of money, get it set up. Honestly, anybody that I have helped through the process of setting up a password manager always comes out the other end saying, wow, that wasn't as hard as what I thought. Why was I putting it off for so long? And it just
Yeah.
makes your life so much easier and you just feel so much secure once you have it done.
Yeah.
Um,
LastPass is great if
yeah,
you like,
it
even just for personal use. It makes you more
yeah,
productive.
it does, and it's easy to use. Yeah, it's a bit glitchy on mobile phones in particular, but
Yeah.
if you're using a computer and a browser, like I have no problems with mine whatsoever. But it's definitely much secure than trying to manage them yourself. So as a
I
small
think
business
it's
owner,
glitchy. Sorry, not to cut you off. I think it's glitchy when you're in like a service provider who has multiple, because that's
yeah,
where I've seen it happen with me and other people I've helped with their VA businesses or services, is if you have like 4 or 5 different Dubsados or 4 or 5 different
yes,
Google passwords, it like automatically will pick one and log you in instead of like
yes,
letting you pick it. And it's like super
yes.
frustrating.
Yes, and that yes, because I have that because I manage phishing platforms for some of my corporates, so
Yeah.
I cross that issue as well. But what I do is I sort of name them a little bit differently,
Okay.
um, so that can help. So when you go, and what I also do is I go to the plugin and
Yeah.
I then say it's Dubsado, type in Dubsado, and then it'll bring you down the list of Dubsado accounts that you have. So instead of going to Dubsado website, first of all, go to it through your
Mhm.
plugin for KnowBe4, and then
Yeah,
select the one that is the login that you want, and then it'll log in using that one. So
that's a
that's
good
how I do it.
idea. That's a
Yeah,
good idea.
that's how you get around that glitchy problem. Because I know if you go to the website, it will automatically just choose a random first one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. That is a good
Um, yeah. And the other thing for small businesses is I would say backup, and test your backup. My famous saying is your backup is only as good as its last test, because that's what I see happen. So many business owners, they will say, yeah, I back up all my data. My data is all safe. And then they go to recover and it won't work, or it's something's not working. So
What would you
test
say to do for backups? Like when you say back up, like you mean back up your computer or back up your software on on those third party ones? Like what do you recommend?
It depends on what's important to you. So, you know, for me, I have a lot of configurations on my computer for a lot of softwares that I use. So if
Mm-hmm.
I needed to reinstall my computer, it's probably going to take me a day's worth of effort to reinstall my computer. So
Mm-hmm.
I back up my computer so that I can restore the image onto my computer if I need to. If you're using cloud vendors for storing your data, say Microsoft, Google, Dropbox, any of these online cloud platforms,
Yeah.
I would also take a backup of them using a third-party vendor and just make sure, maybe delete a file and make sure you can recover it so that you know
Yeah.
what the process is. So when you go to do it, that you can. Maybe, you know, rename a folder even, and something that maybe is 6 months old, and see if you rename it, can you recover it from your backup? So just do little tests like that to make sure that it's actually working.
That's a really good idea, especially because most of my business is basically in third party like software tools. So
Yeah.
that's something that I will definitely be taking away from this interview and doing is backing up my ClickUp more and, my CRM. A lot of people keep a lot of, like you mentioned, their customer data in there. And or everyone talks about email marketing tools and your email list is yours, but sometimes
Yeah.
not in a third party. Like that's one of the biggest things I see. And it is yours in the sense that like it won't be taken away as quickly as like an Instagram or a Facebook.
Yeah.
But like you said, if that vendor goes out of business and you didn't have time to back up or recover or
Yeah.
export, you're screwed. And I saw someone who left their platform because they got into it with the vendor and they didn't think to before getting into it with them to pull out their email list or their templates or anything and they kicked them out like
Yeah.
of the
And
software.
that's the thing, you know, I would definitely, your email list is very, very important. Your contact list, you know, your customer list, whatever it is that you have
Mm-hmm.
a copy of that, have it secured somewhere, you know,
Yep.
because you just don't know, as you say, if the vendor might just disappear or whatever, you might maybe miss a payment and then you can't get access or whatever it might be.
Yep.
Um, just make sure that you have that's your data, that you need to have it somewhere securely. And I suppose my final tip is just stay on top of the risks that's out there right now and the scams and the tactics that they're using. Train your team, especially around email. Start to learn how to identify fake emails. Phishing is basically the number one way that hackers get into all businesses. So fake
Yeah.
emails, number one way. So start to learn what is the tactics that they use. How do you, we call them red flags and phishing emails. So it's normally what I say, look at who the sender is. Is it definitely who they say they are? What is the language that they're using in the email? Hackers always want you to act now. It's very urgent. If you don't act now, you won't have access, or we're going to disable your account, or we're going to delete your files. It's going to be language that makes you need to take action now. And number three, they will always be trying to get you to either click on a link or open an attachment. So if you're being asked to click on a link, have a look at why you're asking to click on a link. The other thing with links is I always copy my link out of the email into the browser. I never click because it's
Got
always
it.
hyperlinked and hidden behind where it's redirecting you to. So
Yeah.
if you think, look, this is an email, it looks legit, it looks like something that I do need to click on,
Mm-hmm.
copy the link and put it into your browser. Or if you can navigate to that place without clicking on the link, always much safer.
Yeah, that's one of my things is like I'll log into the account separate from the email and double check because like nowadays there are like most accounts are better at, sending you that notification or message and you'll be able to find it within your already logged in account.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
really good tip, especially for email phishing because they can slip through the spam filter on anything. And I have
Yeah.
like that filter is just AI. It's not
Yeah.
bulletproof. And I see people I've actually subscribed to their list going to the spam. You know,
Yeah.
it's
And
not
stuff
foolproof.
gets through all the time. Like the AI is always one step behind the hackers. You have to remember that. They're
Mhm.
always coming up with new techniques and methods to get past the spam filter. So they're always trying to catch up. So they're always, in every organization that I've worked in, there will always be a set percentage that will get through.
And do you have like a newsletter or a membership or something that like we can just have the tips directly in our inbox? Like, I would pay for that. I would be like, oh, a membership where she's just going to summarize what I need to know, top security news. Like, I want it.
Yeah, I do have a membership coming, but mostly my Instagram account, or you can join my email list. I will send out, like I've just sent out about the LastPass breach, what that means, and whether you need to change your passwords, which you don't. You know, anything like a couple of, probably about a month ago, the Apple vulnerability. So everybody needs to update their iPhone. So I sent out to my email list how to update your iPhone. Because a lot of people know. So if you want to jump on my email list, but Instagram, I share a lot there. I do have workshops coming up, and I do regularly. And I have a small course, so it's a self-paced online course where I walk you through doing a security review of your own business. So we look at 3 key areas, and the technology, the people, and your processes, because that's the 3 key areas of cybersecurity. Process is not probably one of the areas that lets a lot of people down. You know, simple things like, if you've got staff and you've given them a computer that they can take home, are their kids allowed to use that computer? Have you told them that their kids are not allowed to use that computer? You know, process is very, very important when it comes to cyber as well.
I'm going to have to take a look at that, because those are like the key 3 things that I talk about, but I talk about that in a totally different way. It's really about helping the business owner get out of doing everything themselves and just having that business that they love, because that's what's going to help them scale. But like you said, there are things that you have to think about, and some people don't think about them until it's too late. So,
but I also say, you know, we work so hard to build our ideal, or to attract our ideal customers. And I've had cases where, this is a recent case that I've had with a small business here in Australia. They attracted this ideal client that they've been trying to work on for 12 months. And they were so happy that they'd won this ideal client. They started doing work for the client, but they didn't put contractual agreements in place. Came to invoice time, and there was a query over the invoice. So the 2 companies were emailing back and forward about the query of the invoice, and they finally came to a settlement amount of $30,000. The company paid the $30,000 and didn't question it. But their new ideal customer didn't receive the money, and phoned them up 2 weeks later and said, "Why have you not paid that $30,000? We agreed. Where is it?" And they're like, "We did pay that. We paid it that day." And when it traced back, the hackers had hacked their ideal client's mailbox, intercepted the invoice, and changed the bank account details. So the relationship then between this customer and their ideal client had then gone sour, because they were out of money, they had paid it, then 2 insurance companies are fighting, saying, "No, well, yours are both are wrong." So, you know, that's what I just say. You know, it's super important as well from a customer relationship point of view, and your brand reputation and everything. You imagine if that was you and one of your customers, and you get into a dispute about an invoice that didn't get paid, but it went to a hacker, it could ruin the relationship.
Oh, that's terrible. I mean, I've dealt with a couple of bad clients, but it wasn't because of that this year. But that would be like, that's just like, makes my stomach turn.
It does. It's devastating, because like, I know myself as a small business owner, and working with small business owners, we are in this to help and to serve and to give back. That's why we do it. Otherwise, we'd probably go and take a corporate job and not have the same stresses that you have as a small business owner. So, you know, to have that happen to you and your customer, it is devastating. And so that, as a small business owner, those are the types of things that you need to think about. So it's more than just the technology side, you know, it is your brand reputation that's at stake as well.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, because like, insurance is another thing people don't think about. That's been on my to-do list for far too long, is to update my liability, like to update and get liability insurance as a business owner, because you don't know, and things can happen, and it's better to be safe than sorry. And like a $30,000 hit for a small business owner could be game
Yeah.
changing.
Yeah, it could put your lights out.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So much good perspectives though, and like so many good tips. And like you said, your email list, you send those out. You also can follow her on Instagram, which we will link all of that in the show notes below so that you guys can follow her and keep up to date on how to be secure and how to stay safe with all of this. Like, we don't want you to think it's super scary. It is
No.
very manageable, but it is
Very.
a conversation that people need to have, because you don't want to be like putting your head in the sand and just acting like it's not going to happen, because
Yeah.
it's better to be what was the saying that I always used to say? Plan for the worst, but hope for the best. You want to
Yeah.
plan in place in case, but never have to use it. Like, especially someone who is a survivor. Like, if you follow my channel, if you know, like my background is in domestic violence, and that was just something like I did day to day was, I had to plan for anything to go wrong and everything to go wrong. I hoped it didn't, but you have to just, when you're living life like that, you
Yeah.
never know what's going to happen. So some people
Yeah.
who've never had anything bad happen don't think about it.
So it's so true. It's so true. You could say that from all areas of life.
Mm-hmm.
But like cybersecurity, it seems scary, it seems hard. But honestly, all the small businesses that work with me will say that I make it very accessible. And I actually have had quite a few people say that I even make it fun. So that's one of my big values in business is life has to be fun. And it can be fun. It doesn't have to be scary. And I guarantee you, once you get those ducks in a line, you will feel so empowered, so in control, and you'll be so proud of yourself that you've actually taken those steps.
Yes, I couldn't agree more that you have opened up my eyes to so much in this interview. You've given us so many good key takeaways that anyone listening can do them right away. And I love that you're putting them in workshops. So I'm definitely going to be attending a workshop in the near future, because I think that it's amazing that you're making it so accessible for small business owners, especially when people nowadays are making so much money virtually online. And like we talked about, social media, if you're a content creator, your whole life is basically whatever that
Online.
platform is.
Yeah.
So I think that this is such a good topic, and not enough people are talking about it, and there's not enough people helping these small business owners. So I'm so grateful for your time with us today. Is there anything else before we sign off that we might not have gotten to? One last takeaway you'd like to give?
Probably just take action,
Yeah.
One of the things that I say when I deliver security awareness is that awareness doesn't change our behaviors, action does.
Yep.
So you've probably heard us talk about this today, and you need to go and take action. Just don't do anything about it, because you will regret it, and you'll be one of those people saying, "Oh, I never thought it would happen to me." We don't want you to be in that boat. Take small actions, do something small that will definitely make you feel more safe.
Yep. So if you're listening to this, you're now aware. First step is obviously awareness, and now your action is to go follow her on Instagram and get on her email newsletter at a minimum, and to start backing yourself up. Those are things we all can do today to be safer. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Emma.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you were here with us today.
Thank you.